I was 7 when everything flipped upside down. That was the day Lily, my baby sister, came into the picture. My folks, they just couldn't get enough of her. "Look at that, she's got our nose, our eyes," they'd gush, acting like I was some stranger who accidentally wandered into the photo. I'll never forget the day they brought Lily home from the hospital. The whole house was buzzing like some big shot was coming to visit. And there I was, smack in the middle of it all, just trying to catch a glimpse of this sister everyone was fussing over. But no, the moment they walked in, it was like I turned invisible. "Nellie, sweetie, why don't you go play outside? Let us have some time with Lily," Mom said, with a kind of gentle shove towards the door. Dad was no better, all googly-eyed over Lily, acting like I wasn't there. As time marched on, it was clear who got the VIP treatment. Lily got the works, the newest toys, clothes that weren't picked out of a clearance bin, and even the better slices of cake. Me? I got the leftovers, the hand-me-downs, and the good enoughs. School turned into a nightmare. "Hey, Scarecrow," they'd jeer, poking fun at my out-of-date, out-of-style getup. It stung, you know? I tried, really tried, to tell Mom and Dad how rough it was, hoping maybe, just maybe, they'd see me again. "I'm getting picked on at school. It's the clothes," I managed to spit out one evening. Mom barely glanced up, her hands busy prepping Lily's favorite meal. "Oh, Nellie, you're making mountains out of molehills. Lily's the baby, she needs the best we can give," she said, like that explained everything. Dad wasn't any help either. "You're the big sister, Nellie. You gotta be tough," he'd say, dismissing my feelings like they were nothing. That's how it was. Lily, with her shiny new things, and me, fading more into the background each day. I tried to brush it off, pretend it didn't bother me. But it did. Seeing Lily destroy her brand new toys while I clung to my second-hand ones, it just didn't sit right. Lily was the queen bee of our house, and she knew it too well. Her rule wasn't just about getting the best of everything, it was about making sure I knew my place, which was way below hers, obviously. One afternoon, I came home from school, my spirits a bit higher than usual. I'd actually had a decent day, no one called me names, and I'd aced a math test. But that was about to change. I walked into our room to find Lily with a marker in hand, my math notebook open and scribbled all over. Pages torn, equations smudged into oblivion. "Lily, what the heck are you doing?" I yelled, snatching the notebook from her grasp. She just looked up at me, her eyes wide with faux innocence. "I was just drawing. It looked boring," she retorted, her voice dripping with disdain. "Boring? That was my homework. How am I supposed to turn this in now?" I could feel the anger bubbling up, my brief moment of peace shattered. "Oh, boo-hoo. Just tell the teacher your dog ate it," she sneered, rolling her eyes and hopping off the bed, clearly not done wreaking havoc. Fuming, I gathered the ruined pages, trying to salvage what I could. It was then that Mom walked in, her eyes immediately drawn to the mess. "What happened here?" she asked, her tone already accusing me. "Lily destroyed my math homework with her art," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the injustice burning inside me. Mom turned to Lily, who by now had perfected her me look. "I didn't mean to. I was just playing," she said, the picture of innocence. And just like that, I knew I was the one who'd end up in trouble. "Nellie, can't you see she didn't do it on purpose? You're older, you should understand," Mom chided, her words a slap in the face. The days turned into a never-ending loop of Lily's cruelties. She'd ruin my stuff, play the victim, and I'd get the heat. Clothes, books, even my few cherished items from Grandma, nothing was safe. One day, I caught her red-handed, pouring paint over my school project. "Lily, that's my project. Why?" I shouted, grabbing the paint bottle from her. "It's funny. You should have seen your face," she laughed, her enjoyment of my misery clear as day. That was it. I'd had enough. "You're such a brat," I yelled, the words out before I could stop them. Her laughter stopped, and she stared at me, shocked that I'd finally retaliated. But then, as predictable as the sunrise, her eyes filled with tears, and she ran out of the room, wailing like I'd struck her. Mom was on us in seconds, her face a mix of concern for Lily and anger towards me. "What did you do to your sister?" she demanded, her hands on her hips. "She ruined my project, and I called her out on it." I protested, knowing it was futile. "Lily's just a child, Nellie. You're the adult here. Apologize to your sister," Mom ordered, her voice leaving no room for arguments. Apologize? For what? Standing up for myself? The unfairness of it all was suffocating. But I knew arguing would only make things worse. So I swallowed the lump in my throat, nodded, and went to find Lily. In the midst of all the chaos at home, I found my escape in books. Grandma had this old bookshelf in her living room, crammed with every story you could imagine. From the first time she showed it to me, I was hooked. It was like stepping into another world, one where I wasn't just the overlooked older sister. "Nellie, try this one," Grandma would say, handing me a thick novel with a worn-out cover. "It'll take you on a grand adventure." I'd sit there, curled up on her couch, diving headfirst into tales of distant lands and daring heroes. For a few hours, I could forget about Lily and the constant comparisons at home. One day, Grandma caught me reading instead of doing my homework. "Nellie, you know you've got responsibilities," she chided, but her eyes twinkled with understanding. "Yeah, I know. But these stories, Grandma, they make me feel different. Like I'm not just me." I tried to explain, struggling to put into words how much those books meant to me. Grandma sat down next to me, her arm wrapping around my shoulders. "Books are special, Nellie. They're friends who never let you down. But remember, the real world is out there too. You've got to find your place in it." Back at home, Lily noticed my growing obsession with reading. "Why do you always have your nose in a book? It's so boring," she'd scoff, her disdain for anything that didn't revolve around her clear as day. "It's better than dealing with you," I'd snap back, immediately regretting letting her get to me. "Whatever, nerd. Enjoy your stupid books," Lily would retort, flouncing off to report my rude behavior to Mom and Dad. Mom didn't get it either. "Nellie, why don't you spend more time with your sister instead of reading all day? You're setting a bad example." How was I setting a bad example? By trying to find some peace? It was like they were speaking a different language, one where logic and understanding were foreign concepts. "Because she doesn't get it, Mom. She doesn't get me. No one here does," I said once, my frustration boiling over. "All this reading's making you moody. Maybe you should take a break," Mom suggested, completely missing the point. A break? From the one thing that made me happy? No way. Those books were my lifeline, transporting me from a home where I felt invisible to places where anything was possible. I wasn't about to give that up. Evenings at Grandma's became my sanctuary. She never judged, never told me I was reading too much or wasting my time. Instead, she'd just smile and pass me another book. "You're a lot like me, Nellie. A dreamer. And that's a good thing." "Thanks, Grandma. It's just hard. At home, I admitted, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "I know, dear. But remember, the people in those stories you love? They face challenges, they struggle, but they never give up. You've got that same spirit in you." Those books and the time with Grandma, they were like a lifeline for me. But everything took a hit when I turned 17. Grandma passed away. It felt like losing my anchor in a stormy sea. My parents, though, they barely batted an eye. All they saw was an opportunity to dig through her stuff, like vultures circling for a meal. "I can't believe she had all this old junk. What are we even going to do with it?" Mom said, rifling through Grandma's things with a dismissive air. Dad was no better, eyes lighting up at the thought of what could be sold. "There's gotta be something valuable here. People pay good money for antiques," he mused, completely ignoring the sentimental value of Grandma's possessions. Then came the moment they found Grandma's library, my sanctuary. Those shelves held more than books, they held memories, lessons, and love. But to my parents, it was just another space taker. We should just toss these out. Clear up some space, Dad said, ready to condemn my world to a trash bin. Panic surged through me at the thought. No. Please, can I have them? If you don't want them, I'll take them, I blurted out, desperation making my voice louder than I intended. Mom and Dad exchanged looks, eyebrows raised as if the idea was ludicrous. You want these old things? What for? You've got enough junk, Mom said, her voice laced with skepticism. They're not junk. They were Grandma's, please, I begged, the thought of losing those books like losing a part of me. Dad snorted, a sound of disbelief and annoyance. Fine, take them. It's less for us to deal with, he conceded, clearly uninterested in the emotional value the books held for me. Graduation day hit me with a mix of excitement and dread. I knew my folks didn't have the cash to send me off to college. I was gearing up to hit the job hunt hard, save up every penny for tuition. But then, out of the blue, Mom and Dad offered to foot the bill for my studies. We'll pay for your college, Dad announced one evening, like it was no big deal. I was floored. Maybe they did care, deep down. Maybe they saw how hard I worked, how much I wanted this. Packing my bags, stuffing them with my worn-out clothes and those precious books from Grandma, I felt a flicker of hope. Off to college to become an accountant, I was determined to make them proud. Living on campus was a game-changer. I hit the books and the part-time job circuit with everything I had. My roommates threw around jokes, calling me Cinderella for how I juggled studying and working. You're gonna miss your youth, buried in those books and work, they'd laugh. But I didn't mind, I had my eye on the prize. Then, the bomb dropped. Mom called one day, her voice all business. It's great you found a job, but don't forget, you owe us half your paycheck every month. I nearly dropped the phone. What? But I'm barely covering my expenses here. I thought the deal was just for tuition. That was the deal. Tuition in exchange for you paying us back. You're working now, so start sending the money, she snapped, her tone ice cold. I tried to argue, to explain how tight things were already, but it was like talking to a brick wall. We paid for your ticket out of here. You owe us, period, was her final word on the matter. So, I started sending them half my earnings. Every paycheck felt like a punch in the gut, a reminder that my hard work wasn't really mine. My roommates noticed the change, saw how every call home left me stressed and angry. Cinderella's turned into a debtor, huh? They'd say, trying to lighten the mood. But it wasn't funny. Not really. I felt trapped, like I was caught in a cycle I couldn't break free from. Studying, working, then handing over half of what I made. It was a brutal wake-up call. My parents' generosity was just another chain, another way to keep me tied to them, indebted and under control. Years rolled by, and I clawed my way up to become an accountant at a big company. The pay was nothing to brag about at first, but it was mine, and it fueled dreams of getting my own place, a tiny apartment where the only rules were the ones I made. Then came the family dinner, thrown in my honor for finishing college. That's where the dream got punched in the gut. Over plates of cold lasagna, Mom and Dad laid it on me thick. You need to keep giving us half your salary, Dad said, not a hint of thanks in his voice. I choked on my food, stunned. What? Still? I thought that was just for college. Mom's look could freeze lava. You owe us, for your education. You think that was free? Their words hit like a slap. There I was, dreaming of freedom, and they were tightening the chains. I had no choice but to stay put, handing over half my earnings, living in a room that felt more like a cell. With their hands out and jobs now just part-time, my folks settled into a comfy routine of TV binges, while I slaved away. Coming home meant stepping into a house where even a cooked meal was too much to ask for. Lily, oh, she turned the entitlement up to 11. Hey, I need money for a new phone. Mine's practically ancient. she'd say, her hand outstretched, a smirk playing on her lips. She knew I was strapped, but that didn't stop her. Dressing in second-hand clothes became the norm, my wardrobe a decade behind, earning whispers and side-eyes at work. I was the living, breathing definition of budget fashion, if you can call it fashion. Fast forward a few years, my salary finally hit $4,000. Sounds like a win, right? Wrong. Half went straight to my parents, and Lily, ever the leech, siphoned off another grand for her essentials. Makeup, clothes, you name it, she had to have it, and somehow, it was on my dime. I was stuck, a cash cow for a family that saw me more as a wallet than a daughter. Just need a bit more for a night out with the girls, Lily would chirp, as if I was made of money. You do realize I work for my money, right? It's not like I'm swimming in it. I'd snap back, tired of the constant drain. Mom would always jump to her defense. She's young, let her enjoy life. You're always so stingy. Stingy? With what, the pennies I was left with? Every day felt like a battle, coming home to demands and complaints, my own needs always last on the list. Turning 30 should have felt like a milestone, a reason to celebrate or at least acknowledge I've survived 3 decades. But as fate would have it, my big day slipped by unnoticed by those who were supposed to be my nearest and dearest, my parents and Lily. I walked into the house that evening, half expecting a surprise, maybe a small cake or a happy birthday tossed my way. Instead, I found nothing but the usual indifference. Hey, you guys remember what day it is? I ventured, hoping for a flicker of recognition. Mom looked up, puzzled, then shrugged. Thursday? No, it's my birthday, I said, a mix of disappointment and anger simmering within me. Oh, right. Well, happy birthday then. Why don't you order us some pizza to celebrate? Your treat, Dad said without missing a beat, already scrolling through his phone for the pizza place's number. Without a word, I turned and retreated to my room, locking the door behind me. The sound of their laughter and the casual way they dismissed me echoed in my mind. This was the final straw. It was clear as day now, nothing was going to change unless I made it happen. It was just another night, counting the cost of dreams deferred, when my phone buzzed. Aunt Maggie, Mom's sister, rarely called, so seeing her name light up the screen was a jolt. Hey, Aunt Maggie, I answered, trying to mask the exhaustion in my voice. Happy birthday, love. I was thinking about you. Did your folks do something nice for you? Her voice was warm, a contrast to the chill I felt at home. I laughed, hollow. Nice? You could say it's been just another day. There was a pause, heavy with unspoken words. Listen, dear, I've been meaning to tell you something. It's about your grandma's contribution to your college fund. I sat up straighter, confusion threading through my curiosity. What contribution? Mom and Dad paid for college. They remind me every chance they get. Aunt Maggie sighed, a sound laden with regret. No, love. It was your grandma. She set aside a fund for you, made your parents promise to use it for your education. They never spent a dime of their own money on your tuition. The room spun. They, what? But they've been taking my money, saying I owe them for college. It's the truth. I thought you knew. I'm so sorry, Nellie. I hung up, my mind racing. The betrayal stung, burning away the fog of years of manipulation. It wasn't just about the money, it was the principle, the years of control, of making me feel less than, all based on a lie. I walked out to confront them, Mom, Dad, and Lily, all there, celebrating as if they hadn't just forgotten my birthday, as if they hadn't been lying to me all my life. I know about the lie. I blurted out, my voice steady, despite the emotions raging inside. Grandma paid for my college, not you. Their laughter cut off abruptly, replaced by a stunned silence, before Mom tried to brush it off. What nonsense. Sit down, let's eat. You're overreacting as usual. Dad, with that smug look of his, chimed in. Yeah, and don't forget to pay for this feast. It's your treat, remember? That's when I dropped the bomb. I'm done. I'm leaving. You've lied and used me for the last time. Their smirks faded. Dad's eyes widened, and Mom's face went pale. You can't be serious, she stammered. After everything we've done for you? I was firm. Exactly, because of everything you've done. I'm out. Lily snorted, her usual mocking self. Where will you go? You can barely afford to dress yourself. I ignored her jab. I'll figure it out. I'd rather struggle on my own than continue living like this. Dad finally set his phone down, his expression serious for once. You think you can just walk away from your responsibilities here? My only responsibility is to myself, I countered. I've done enough for this family, more than enough. It's time I start living for me. Mom's face hardened. If you walk out that door, don't think of coming back. Packing was a blur. I took what mattered most, Grandma's books, a few clothes. Everything else, all the trappings of a life filled with deceit, I left behind. I found a place, small but mine, a little apartment that felt more like home than any house I'd ever lived in. The shock of realizing I could actually afford to live on my own, without scrimping or saving every penny for them, was liberating. For the first time, I could breathe, really breathe, without the weight of their expectations and manipulations crushing me. A month went by in a blissful, peaceful haze. Then the calls started. Mom, Dad, even Lily, all suddenly remembering my number, their voices dripping with false sweetness and desperate pleas. We need help, they'd say. We can't make ends meet without your help. I couldn't help but laugh. The audacity, after years of taking and taking, to ask for more. This time, I was ready. I blocked their numbers, cutting off the last tie to a past I no longer wanted any part of. Life in my new apartment was like breathing fresh air after being underwater for too long. I filled it with plants, cozy cushions, and, of course, Grandma's books took pride of place on the shelves. My first morning there, I remember making coffee and just sitting on the floor, surrounded by boxes, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. It wasn't long before I had to dive into work, and that's where I really started to see the changes in me. I wasn't just more confident, I felt empowered, like I could tackle any challenge thrown my way. My colleagues noticed too. Nellie, you've been on fire lately, Jenna, a close colleague, commented as we grabbed lunch one day. I smiled, stirring my coffee. Feels like I've finally woken up, you know? Yeah, I do. It's awesome to see. You're, like, a whole new person. That whole new person vibe wasn't just in my professional life. For the first time, I started to invest in myself too. I picked up hobbies that I'd always wanted to try but never had the time or energy for, thanks to my previous family obligations. I started painting, something I hadn't done since I was a kid, and joined a local hiking group. Life felt full, vibrant, and entirely mine. Aunt Maggie became my rock during this time. Her support was unwavering, and she was always just a call away, ready to listen or offer advice. One evening, she invited me over for dinner, something that had become a monthly tradition for us. As we sat down to eat, she broached a subject I hadn't expected. Nellie, I've been thinking. You've done so well for yourself, really turned your life around. How would you feel about inheriting my house? I wanted to go to someone who loves it as much as I do, and I can't think of anyone better than you. I almost choked on my water. Aunt Maggie, that's incredibly generous, but I can't accept that. Why not? She asked, her eyes twinkling. Think of it as a family legacy, passing from one generation to the next. You deserve it, Nellie. We went back and forth, but Aunt Maggie was insistent. By the end of the night, I was overwhelmed by her generosity and what it meant for my future. It was a testament to how far I'd come, from being the family's forgotten provider to being recognized and valued for who I was. Reflecting on my journey, I realized that breaking free from my family's toxic dynamics was the best decision I'd ever made. It wasn't just about gaining financial independence or escaping their constant demands, it was about finding myself, discovering my worth outside of their valuation. Life now was a testament to the power of change, of making hard choices for the sake of one's own happiness and well-being. I had learned that sometimes, the family you create is just as important as the one you're born into. And sometimes, to find your true place in the world, you have to be willing to leave behind everything you thought you knew.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. president of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.